If you could see every single path your life could take, would you want to know? Or is the mystery what makes life worth living? You've tried different jobs, different hobbies, but nothing clicks. You scroll through endless articles, watch guru after guru, all promising to help you find your purpose, but you just end up feeling more confused. This is the story of Chloe, a young woman who felt exactly that way. She was drowning in a sea of unfulfilled potential, searching for a sign, any sign, that would point her in the right direction. One windy afternoon, her sign finally appeared, not on a screen, but on a piece of paper. A strange old flyer tumbled across her path. It had just 4 words printed on it: "Find your story, no purchase necessary." Intrigued, Chloe followed the flyer's lead down a forgotten alley she'd never noticed before. There, tucked away from the world, was a quaint, oddly silent bookstore. It had no name, just a symbol carved above the door, a single, open eye. Pushing the heavy wooden door, she stepped inside, leaving the noise of the city and her own uncertainty behind. The air inside was different. It wasn't just quiet. It was filled with a strange, humming energy, almost electric. Thousands of books lined the shelves, stretching from the floor to the high, shadowed ceiling. But no cashier, no customers, no librarian, just Chloe and the books. As she walked deeper into the labyrinth of shelves, she noticed something peculiar. Some of the books seemed to pulse with a faint, warm glow as she passed them. It was as if they were reacting to her presence. Then she heard it. A whisper, not in her ears, but directly in her mind. A soft, clear voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Each book here is a life," it said. "Past, present, or possible." From the deep shadows between 2 towering shelves, a figure emerged. It was a woman, her face kind and lined with an age that seemed impossible to measure. This was the librarian. She explained that this wasn't just any bookstore. The books didn't just hold stories. They reflected them. When you stood near a book, it would read you, showing you a potential path. The librarian gestured toward a specific dusty shelf tucked away in a corner. "That," she said, her voice soft but resonant, "is the shelf of echoes. It shows you the books of lives you've already touched, or lives that were touched by you." This was it. This was the answer she had been searching for. The key to understanding her own life, her own purpose. But she didn't realize that the answers she was about to find would raise far more terrifying questions. Hesitantly, Chloe approached the shelf of echoes. Her hand trembled as she reached for a book that was glowing with a warm, inviting light. The moment her fingers brushed against the leather spine, her world dissolved. She wasn't in the bookstore anymore. She saw herself, but a different version of herself. This Chloe was a passionate artist, her hands smudged with paint, her eyes alive with creativity. She stood in a bright, sunlit studio, surrounded by vibrant canvases and smiling students who looked at her with admiration. The feeling was intoxicating, a life filled with purpose and joy. She let go, her breath catching in her throat, and reached for another book, this one feeling cool and solid. The vision shifted. Each book she touched revealed another life, another complete, vivid existence she could have lived. One was a traveler, another a healer, another a quiet scholar. Each one was meaningful. Each one was perfect in its own way. The possibilities were overwhelming, a banquet of lives laid out before her. But then, the librarian's gentle voice cut through her daze, pointing toward the highest, most shadowed shelf in the entire store, a place Chloe hadn't even noticed. "Those," the librarian warned, her tone suddenly, "the stories that have not yet begun, or the stories that should have begun, but never did. Never touched them without purpose." The warning hung in the air, heavy and ominous. But for Chloe, who felt like her own story had never truly begun, the temptation was unbearable. She had to know. Driven by a desperate longing for answers, she ignored the warning. Her eyes scanned the unwritten shelf and locked onto a single plain volume. It had no title, no markings, but it seemed to call to her, pulling her in with an invisible force. She reached up, her fingers stretching toward the unadorned cover. The instant she made contact, a wave of profound, soul-crushing sadness washed over her. This vision was different. She saw the life of a brilliant scientist, a woman she didn't know, dedicating her existence to curing a rare, devastating disease. Chloe witnessed her breakthrough, the moment of pure genius that would save countless lives. But she also saw the rest of the story. The scientist died young, tragically alone, her personal life a wasteland of unfulfilled dreams and lost love. The life was beautiful, heroic, and heartbreakingly incomplete. Chloe felt a powerful sense of loss, not for herself, but for this unwritten scientist, for a story that was so meaningful yet so sad. Shaken, Chloe pulled her hand back as if burned. She turned to the librarian, her mind racing. These books, they aren't just showing me possibilities, are they? They're showing me destinies. The librarian simply nodded, her ancient eyes filled with a deep, knowing sorrow. They are the threads of the great tapestry, she explained. Some are spun, some are cut, some are simply waiting. In that moment, Chloe understood the terrible truth of the bookstore. It wasn't a place of answers. It was a prison of possibilities. Seeing all these perfect lives, these complete stories, wasn't inspiring her. It was paralyzing her. How could she possibly choose her own path when she could see every other glorious or devastating outcome? The weight of all these other lives pressed down on her, and she felt her own sense of self, her own will. She was becoming just another story to be read, another potential life to be observed from the sidelines. The very thing she came here to find her purpose was being erased by the sheer volume. And then, the true horror of the situation revealed itself. Chloe's eyes were drawn back to the unwritten shelf. The situation revealed itself. A new book was forming there, appearing out of thin air. The bookstore was reading her now. It was preparing her potential lives, cataloging her possible futures, turning her into just another exhibit on the shelf for some other lost soul to find. She was no longer the reader. She had become the book. The choice was suddenly crystal clear. She could stay here, forever browsing the library of what-ifs, eventually picking up her own book to see which pre-written destiny felt the most appealing. She could live a life vicariously, a perfect story written by an invisible hand. Or she could do something else entirely. She looked at the shimmering book with her name on it. Then she looked at the librarian. A small, determined smile touched her lips. "I don't want to read my story," she said, her voice stronger than it had ever been. "I want to live it." With a surge of newfound purpose that came not from a book, but from within, Chloe turned her back on the infinite shelves and walked out of the silent bookstore. She stepped back into the noisy, messy, unpredictable world. The sun felt warm on her face. She still didn't have a grand, cosmic purpose. She didn't know if she would be an artist or an activist or something else entirely. But for the first time, she knew that the answer wasn't something to be found, but something to be created. As she walked down the street, she passed a local community center. A flyer was tacked to the board, advertising volunteer positions for a kids' art class. She hesitated for only a second. Then she walked in. The future is unwritten, but for the first time in her life, Chloe was finally holding the pen. Thank you for watching. What do you think Chloe's story will become? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think. See you next time.